Hey folks, in this video I'll be breaking down how I play the traditional folk song Geordie. I'll go over the tuning, the chords and the voicings that I use and why, the right hand strumming pattern, and the bass lines and melodic bits that I like to throw in. So if you're excited to learn this one, or you're just looking for some new ideas for your D major songs and tunes, stick around. This song was on my second solo album released in 2017, and around the same time I also put out a video for it, and for some reason that video has more views than anything else on my channel. I'm really not sure why. I didn't know that the song was all that popular, but maybe it's just that it's a happy trad song and it doesn't end poorly like so many of them do, and that message seems to be resonating. Over the years I've gotten requests to do a tab for this one, but to be honest, I'm not a big fan of doing tabs for things like this because it's rhythm driven, and so much of it would just end up being block chords written out in a way that was just sort of approximating what I'm doing. And in my personal opinion, it's a lot better to learn things like this by ear as much as you can, and ideally have somebody slow it down, show you the feel, show you the nuances of it. So that's why I'm doing a tutorial video instead. I have also made a chord chart for it, and I did tab out the select melodic bits, so those will be available to download over on my website, and those will of course be linked in the description below. Now if you're here, you probably already know my version to some extent, so you know that it's in a major key and it ends happily. There are no murders, yay! There are other versions of Geordie where his faithful wife is not able to save him, and those ones are typically in a minor key, but honestly I think this one is a lot more fun to play. It's a lot sweeter, and of course it has that epic triumphant ending. I learned this version from June Tabor's recording on the first Silly Sisters album, which has Martin Carthy's just epic accompaniment going on underneath, so if you haven't heard that version yet, definitely go check it out. Obviously when I recorded it, I didn't want to just be copying the Silly Sisters version, so I opted to use a flat pick, and I bumped the key up to D to accommodate my voice. On my album, there is also a second guitar part played by my friend Owen Marshall. He capoed the guitar up a ways, and so he's playing some higher twinkly sounds. I won't be breaking down what he does, I'll just be focusing on what I do to accompany myself. Alright, that's enough of a preamble, let's go ahead and dig in. First things first, you're going to want to tune that low E string down to a D so that you get a nice drop D tuning. So the song is in D, and at its core, it's really just 1 and 4. You could play nothing but a simple 1 and a simple 4, and that would be enough to back this melody. And when it comes to the position, I'm not thinking of this D as my starting point. I'm thinking about this D as my sort of home base. Either this D5, open, 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 2, 3, or this D, which has the F sharp there on the D string. So it's open, open, 4, 2, 3. Now, I'm usually sort of incidentally muting the high E string with my index finger, so even when I hit a nice full chord, I'm not risking having a high E ring out at all. And now the nice thing about using this particular voicing too is it frees up that ring finger to either mess around and do some melodic things, or it makes it a little bit easier to go ahead and jump up and grab your G, which of course is going to be here rather than there because we're in drop D. So we've got 5, muted, open, open, D, or 3, sorry. Or occasionally I'll also play this version of the 5, which is 5, muted, open, 4, open. So you get a little bit of a double B there. Or you could always play the D as well. Either one of those options, sort of similar to the D, it just sort of matters which flavor you're going for at that moment. Honestly, if you wanted to totally reduce the song down to just those 2 chords, the D and the G, or even further, the D5 and the G5, it would still really support the melody and sound great. There was a battle in the north, the nobles there were many, and they have killed Sir Charlie Hay and laid the blame on Geordie. That being said, as great as that still sounds, I'm going to go ahead and guess that a lot of you are here for the more interesting things that I do and how I dress it up, so we'll go ahead and start talking about those. In addition to these 2 D voicings, I do also throw in the D over F sharp quite a bit. That's your 4, muted, it doesn't have to be muted, but I usually end up muting it. 4, muted, open D, 2, 3. Going going into the G, so it creates a little bit of a bass line motion. And I also occasionally play the G over B. You skip the D string, 2, open, open, 3. And I also throw in the occasional A7 sus4, or A sus7, basically an A sus4 with the 7. So you've got your A, E, G, D, or open, 2, open, 3. And again, not hitting the bass note D on that one. So a little sidebar here. I am not a big fan of the standard A chord in this song. I think it sounds a little bit too bright and dominant. I'm more of a fan of the A7 sus4, which is sort of the least dominant sounding dominant chord possible, or maybe the slightly brighter sounding A sus4. And it just, for the sort of the way this song works, and for a lot of folk music personally, I like a little bit less dominant of a sound. Though that said, you could still throw in either the full A, and you could throw in more of those A chords than I typically tend to do. I'll show you how that can also sound. They have killed Sir Charlie Hay and laid the blame on Geordie. Or normally I would play, laid the blame on Geordie, and just go from the G back into the D. Honestly, either one does work. If you do like that nice strong 5-to-1 progression, feel free to throw that in instead. And lastly, as a sub for the D, I do occasionally throw in a B minor. That's just the standard B minor, 2, 4, 4, 3. All right, now that we've got the chord voicings out of the way, we're going to go over what is arguably the most important factor of this song, and that is the rhythm, or my right hand approach. That is the thing that I think makes it the most fun and interesting. And if all you did was play the simplest D and G chords while you get the feel of this rhythm, I think that is a great way to start. So focus on this first before you jump into anything further. All right, I've got another sidebar here, and that is to do with pick choice. When I made the album, I was still using a Dunlop Ultex 0.6mm pick, which is a pretty thin pick. And by the time I made the video, I had switched to blue chips. So honestly, I think you can make an argument in favor of either pick. The upside of the thinner picks, at least for me, is not only can I cut through the strings a lot faster, to me it has a little bit more of that sort of classic Irish backer sound, and with the way I end up playing and placing my hand, I can do it more palm muting than I can with the blue chip. But the blue chip has a warmer sound. I think it draws out the melodic stuff a little bit better. So I think you can go either way. I'll play a little bit of both so you can hear them. Honestly, either one has its merits, but I'll probably stick with the blue chip on this video because it is what I use the most often lately. So just giving you some options. All right, so one more thing before we dig into the right hand, and that's the meter. It is a duple meter song, which you would think would be straightforward enough, but it's got these sort of weird, quirky, elongated phrases of 6 beats, or I guess you could think of it as 6/4, or maybe alternating measures of 4/4 and 2/4. And it's not like that the entire song. It's like 5 measures of 6/4 and then 6 measures of 4/4 for a while, depending on how long you maybe play some interstitial measures between verses. I'll show you what I mean. I don't want you to think too much about this because I think it honestly is easier just to sort of focus on the flow of the song, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't really know any better way to explain it than that. But again, I don't want it to be sort of something that you're really conscious of, because I think as long as you're playing that sort of that driving beat and keeping it steady and just following along with where the melody goes, it's not really that weird, but just a little bit of a sidebar. All right, now we're digging into the right hand. No more sidebars for a little while, I promise. So my strumming on this song sort of blends bluegrass with Irish style picking. So you get some boom chucks, but you also get some nice sort of filler upstrokes here and there. And I do vary the pattern throughout the song. It's not always the exact same thing. It varies depending on sort of what I'm trying to emphasize in the vocal line or where the chords are landing. But I'll start off by showing you probably the most important pattern that will give you the best feel for the song. And it's going to sound a little bit like this. So we're going to do a nice big hit the bass on the 1, treble strike on the 2, skip the third beat, and 4, and for the 5 and 6 you could either do boom chuck or down, up, down, up. So in that first measure, it does go from the D to the G, but we're going to just hang out on the D for a little while just to get a feel for that strumming pattern. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, 6. 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 Or, like I said, you could do down, up on the 5 and 6, and that would sound like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 1. But, like I said, the chord does change in the middle of that measure, and it actually makes it a little bit easier to sort of have to feel along with the way the song is moving because you're not just hanging out in that D chord. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1. So oftentimes the 5 and the 6 are either not the D chord or not the chord that started the measure, or it's like I'm using that as a sort of transition point and throwing in that D over F sharp to sort of make that feel a little bit more natural. I'll try to slow that. I'll try to go through the entire chord or the entire verse form a little bit slower, and I'll kind of maybe come in and out with the counting. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, 6. 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 1, 2, 3, 4. It does switch to 4/4 at some point in there, but it's hard to keep track of when you're not singing along. Another thing to note is that sometimes when the measure starts on the G chord, rather than doing that 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'm doing more of like a 1 and 2 and 3, like emphasizing the third beat a little bit because it really is following along with the melody. I'll try to show you how that happens. There was a battle in the north, the nobles there were. You hear that there? Nobles there were many. They have killed Sir Charlie A. So kind of on those two sections where that G chord is the starting point, I like to throw in a little bit of extra oomph along with the vocal line. So there it does sort of deviate from that starting pattern that I showed you, but obviously not super different. I briefly mentioned the measures of 4/4 that come at the ends of the verses and sort of fill in the gaps between verses. Those are a more straightforward sort of 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, or something like that. So I'll try to tie that all together because this is the core stuff. This is if you did nothing but play the D and the G chords or whatever variations you wanted to play and just focused on these patterns, this strumming feel, it would sound great. So I'll try to play it with no vocal, or maybe I'll play it with the vocal first and then I'll play it with no vocal. There was a battle in the north, the nobles there were many. They have killed Sir Charlie A and laid the blame on Geordie. I couldn't resist the urge to throw in the melodic stuff, which we're going to talk about next anyways, so it makes for a good segue. Alright, so now when it comes to making things more interesting, you already heard me doing that D over F sharp quite a bit as a walk up into the G. It just works so nicely with the rhythm, and I think I do it pretty much every time except for on the very first D to G. So, for example, there was a battle in the north, the nobles there were down, D to G, back to D. But for those 2 lines in the middle, it just sounds so nice to do that D over F sharp. Another thing that I'm doing from time to time is throwing in a B minor to A sus4 or A sus7, resolving to the D. This is something that I'll sometimes do between verses as like a little bit of an interstitial punctuation. So, for example, though the word among them all was Gordon's cookie ready, so just kind of go into the next verse from there. Or I will occasionally kind of deliberately use it to add some color to go along with what the story is doing. So, and I'll sub it in for the D at the very beginning of the verse. So for example, on like the verse, some gave her marks, I'll go, some gave her marks, some gave her crowns, some gave her dollars many. And from there, just kind of keep the verse going as I normally would. It just adds a nice little bit of color to, you know, I mean, you can use it if you want to use it more often. Honestly, it does sound really nice. I love a good 6 minor sub for the 1. I just try to use it a little bit more sparsely so that it has more impact, but if you like it a lot, you can use it more often. Another thing to add some variation that I'll do is take the focus off the bass for a little while and put it on the middle and high strings and do this sort of little higher bass thing by focusing on that F sharp there on the 4th fret of the D string, going up to the G there, using my pinky to fret the 5th fret, and then sort of doing that A7 sus4 chord shape, but we're focusing on the E in that case. Jumping down to the B, hitting the C sharp or the 4th on the A string, and then resolving to the D. So I'll slow that down. And that's one of those things that's nice if you can arpeggiate it. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But it's also nice to sort of lightly strum too. And as much as I can, I'm trying to save that low D until the very end of that phrase, just to give it a little bit more like gravitas as it goes back into it. And then from there, I just go back into what I would usually do. Another option you could do is going from that B, instead of going up to the C sharp, you could go down to the E, your low E on the now D string, and then drop it to the D from there. So. Doesn't quite have the same, like, gravitational pull as the C sharp does into the D, but it still sounds kind of cool, so it's another option for you. Alright, now we're going to dig into the melodic aspects of what I'm playing in this song. If you've listened pretty closely to the video, you've probably noticed that I throw in some melodic bits behind my vocal line, primarily at the ends of the verses, just as a way to sort of punctuate, or, you know, as an alternative to playing a stronger G chord or an A chord. And when I'm doing those, I'm basically doing what I would do in the instrumental or something like that, but I'm just doing a sort of fragmented or sparser version of it. So rather than breaking down that stuff first, I think it makes sense to go over how I'm playing the melody as a whole first, and then subtract what I'm doing for the vocal stuff. So we'll start with that. So in order to keep the chord melody all in one position and one octave, I do a little bit of trickery and I start off up high, but then I quickly switch and drop the octave down low. So it's not following my vocal line the way it would keep going up high. It sort of splits down, so it ends up sounding like this. I'll slow that down. So as I mentioned, this melodic stuff I will have tabbed out, so if you're having a harder time getting a hang of this, go ahead and reference those pages. If you've you've listened closely to the original version, you might have already noticed that I never really play the melody exactly as I did it just there, because when I'm adding in chord tones, in order to do that, I often have to drop some of those melody notes, and I'm adding in more notes with the chord stuff. So it ends up having a bit of a different feel. And for example, with the intro, I skip those early high notes altogether, and I aim for the F sharp as sort of being my starting melody note. So I hit the nice open D5 chord, and I go straight for that lower F sharp. So that phrase there, I'll either go to this F sharp, a little hammer on, or I'll hammer on to the low F sharp, and then go to that G chord, and then we've got the open B sort of ringing out there. That's the melody note, but I feel like it emphasizes the melody more to play the fretted B on the G string there, that 4 on the G string. Pull off with a little bit of a slide, but you're not sliding into the F natural. You're sort of, maybe if your hands are bigger, you don't have to do the slide, but and then hitting that nice low D, and that phrase repeats. That's again just F sharp, a little bit of a hammer on, pull off. So again, it's the melody, but it's not quite the melody. It's a little bit of its own thing. I'll try that intro one more time, nice and slow. And then often what I'll do after the intro and between verses, you'll hear this come up, is this little like bass line thing that I'll play around with. Hammer on the B, pull off the E to the D, pull off the B to the A, hit the low D. And sometimes I'll do a little bit of a simpler version of that, kind of incidentally, but you could consistently do. So a variation on that little bass line that I'll sometimes throw in, again, for a specific color, I don't do it all the time, is to throw in sort of like a little bluesy F natural. So you're just, rather than jumping straight down to the D, you're going to the hammer on that B, pull off that E to D, grab it, maybe pull it up a little bit, let it go. Totally optional. I like adding that in for a little bit of extra color. So for the instrumental in the middle of the song, that is where I'm playing sort of the fullest version of the melody, along with a couple of little variations that I'll show you. So I'm going to be grabbing that high D. I like to do when I remember to do it. Basically, I'm just taking that G shape that I've got here, that 5, mute the A string, open D, 4, open B, and I'm sliding it up 2 frets to 7, mute, open, 6, open. So it's an A chord, but with an open D, but with a D and a B. Kind of cool sounding. There. So I'll try to play that all the way through, no interruptions, nice and slow. I'm playing that melody, I'm trying to describe how I'm thinking about and conceptualizing the strumming, because I'm not, again, it's just sort of the strums are going along with the feel of the melody. You're not doing a really strict pattern in any sense. But you are kind of keeping that, this sort of the, like where the chords are landing in mind. So. That's where I think it's really going to help a lot to make sure that you've got a good handle on the rhythm before you even get to this sort of thing. Because once you have that sort of in the back of your mind, it makes more sense and you can sort of play around with it and drop beats here and there and still not lose that sense of it. Lastly, in the realm of melodic stuff that I'm adding is that little bit of guitar doubling the voice that happens at the end of the verses. Laid the blame on Geordie. So F sharp to D to B to A to D. Fairest flower of womankind is my sweet bonny lady. I do that pretty much every time as an alternative to doing a nice full G chord. I just like to do that. I think it sounds kind of nice. Up to you if you want to do it too. All right, time for the broad strokes, big picture stuff. We're going to go through the whole form as I do it in the video. Now, I'll say again, this is not set in stone by any stretch. Anytime I've played this in performance, I probably end up varying it a little bit here and there, whether intentionally or not. I'm just going to think of my one video as sort of being the template that we're going to follow to give you some ideas of what to do to throw in those little bits of harmonic and melodic interest to break up what is otherwise just a non-stop slog of D and G. So we'll go ahead and walk through the whole thing, starting with that intro. It's pretty much the same thing the whole time. I'm doing that D, the D over F sharp to the G, and then doing that little bit of melody backing, we'll call it, towards the end of the verses, and a little bit of those bass lines. They're not always super consistent on the bass lines. I'll kind of vary those a little bit here and there. But more or less the same thing, verses 1 through 5. Now the sixth verse is where the variations start to come in, and we're going to get that first appearance of the B minor at the line that goes, "At first appeared the fatal block." So. At first appeared the fatal block, and then the axe to head him, and Geordie coming down the stairs with the bars of iron upon him. First, we're going to go into that more delicate middle string thing. That's for the first time that's going to come up. Though he was chained in fetters strong, of iron and steel so heavy, there's not a one in all the court was so fine a man as Geordie. Now on the eighth verse, we're going to go back into the main form. Now she's down on her bended knee, I'm sure she's pale and weary. Oh, pardon, pardon, noble king, and pity a woeful lady. Oh, pity a woeful lady. And in the ninth verse, we're going to go back to do that more delicate mid-string thing, where the verse goes, "I have borne him 7 sons." So again, we're sort of matching the mood of the song a little bit. She's pleading desperately, and so we're going to bring it down and make it delicate. I have borne him 7 sons, the 8th is in my body. Going into the 10th verse, this is the last verse before the instrumental, and this is the one where we're going to bring the energy back up, because the king is telling the heading man to make haste. He's trying to give her the shove off here and go ahead with the execution, and she's getting more desperate. A little bit of a sidebar here. In verses 8, 9, and 10, I do a little repeat of the final line. That's just me. That's not super traditional or anything like that. So if you don't like doing that, feel free not to do it. Or if you do like it, keep doing it. Either way. So on that 10th verse, that's where we're going to bring the energy back up, because that's the last verse before the instrumental. And that's where the king is basically saying, let's go ahead with the execution, and she's going to get more desperate and plead even more heartily. So, go tell the heading man, make haste. Our king replied, full loudly, oh noble king, take all that's mine, but give me back my Geordie, oh, give me back my Geordie. So rather than landing on the D there, I like to land on that A sus4 before going into the instrumental. Oh, give me back my Geordie. Oh, give me back my Geordie. And then do a little B to C sharp walk up. Oh, give me back my Geordie. Oh, give me back my Geordie. And then from there we go into that instrumental. The 11th and 12th verses are business as usual, the main format. Verse 13 starts off on that B minor chord. So you're going to hear a little bit of, some gave her marks, some gave her crowns, some gave her dollars many. And then it goes onward like it usually does. And then verse 14, she's saved Geordie from the gallows. It's super triumphant, so we're going to bring the energy back up with the full chords. She's blinked blindly in Geordie's face. And then in that final 15th verse, after they've had the triumph and they're embracing, and Geordie's saying sweet things to her, I like to bring that energy back down again and play it like, he took her by the middle small, he kissed her lips so rosy, and fairest flower of womankind is my sweet bonny lady. And after that final verse, I go into the intro form again, sort of as the outro. So not that thing where it starts on the high D, but we're gonna hit the D chord and then go down to the F sharp. Phew, that was actually harder to explain than I thought it was going to be. For years I've been just kind of shrugging and telling people, oh, I don't know, it's just D and G, there's not really much to it, but there is more to it than I really gave it credit for. So I hope that if you've been wanting to learn this for a while, that you found this helpful. If you have any questions, of course, let me know, either in the comments or send me an email. My email's in the description below. I also hope that it maybe inspires some new ideas for you. Maybe this is a different way of thinking about the key of D than you would normally think about it, and maybe that gives you some new ideas for arrangements or songs of your own. Again, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And in case this wasn't already abundantly clear, if I haven't hammered this home enough already, this is just my version. It's just the way that I play it, and I don't always play it exactly the same way every single time either, so I don't want anybody out there to feel like this is how this song is supposed to be played. This is a folk song. It's meant to be played however you want to play it. If you like this and you want to copy it, great. If you want to take elements of it and do something a little bit different, awesome too. If you want to do something totally different, awesome. Do whatever you want. I hope it just inspires you to go ahead and try the song out and do something with it. Last but not least, please like and subscribe for more folky guitar content like this. My schedule for the rest of the year is going to be to do one tutorial or commentary video the first Sunday of every month, followed by weekly music videos for the rest. So if you want to listen to more songs like this or learn songs like this, please check out my backlog and stay tuned for more videos later on. We'll see you soon.